Good Monday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for March the 11th. Today, we are reading together the 31st Psalm, Psalm number 31. It is headed A Plea for Protection. We were told that it is for the choir director, a Psalm of David. I believe I would classify this psalm as a psalm of confidence, as a psalm of confidence. Pay attention as we're reading through this psalm here. Pay attention where we kind of see alternating focuses from the trust that David has in Yahweh to the grief that he is experiencing, and how he just kind of bounces back and forth between these things, that there's trust in Yahweh and there's trust in Yahweh because he is grieving, and because he is grieving in Yahweh, he is trusting in Yahweh. He just kind of bounces back and forth throughout this psalm. But certainly at the end of the day, when we focus on the message of what David says here, I'd say probably verse number 5 would be the key text within the psalm, and we'll talk about that once we conclude our reading here in just a moment. So let us read together today here, Psalm number 31. Psalm 31 in verse number 1. Yahweh, I seek refuge in you. Let me never be disgraced. Save me by your righteousness. Listen closely to me. Rescue me quickly. Be a rock of refuge for me, a mountain fortress to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. You lead me and guide me for your name's sake. You will free me from the net that is secretly set for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hand I entrust my spirit. You have redeemed me, Yahweh, God of truth. I hate those who are devoted to worthless idols, but I trust in Yahweh. I will rejoice and be glad in your faithful love, because you have seen my affliction. You know the troubles of my soul and have not handed me over to the enemy. You have set my feet in a spacious place. Be gracious to me, Yahweh, because I am in distress. My eyes are worn out from frustration, my whole being as well. Indeed, my life is consumed with grief, and my years with groaning. My strength has failed because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. I'm I'm ridiculed by all my adversaries, and even by my neighbors. I am dreaded by my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street run from me. I am forgotten, gone from memory like a dead person, like broken pottery. I have heard the gossip of many. Terror is on every side. When they conspired against me, they plotted to take my life. But I trust in you, Yahweh. I say you are my God. The course of my life is in your power. Rescue me from the power of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your servant. Save me by your faithful love. Yahweh, do not let me be disgraced when I call on you. Let the wicked be disgraced. Let them be quiet in Sheol. Let lying lips that arrogantly speak against the righteous in proud contempt be silenced. How great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you. In the presence of everyone, you have acted for those who take refuge in you. You hide them in the protection of your presence. You conceal them in a shelter from human schemes, from quarrelsome tongues. Blessed be Yahweh, for he has wondrously shown his faithful love to me in a city under siege. In my alarm, I said, I am cut off from your sight. But you heard the sound of my pleading when I cried to you for help. Love Yahweh, all his faithful ones. Yahweh protects the loyal, but fully repays the arrogant. Be strong and let your heart be courageous, all you who put your hope in Yahweh. Psalm number 31, again, I believe a psalm of confidence. It begins with confident trust in Yahweh. Verses 1 through 3. I seek refuge where? In you. Why you, Yahweh? Because you are where my trust is. I trust again that you will never let me be disgraced. I trust that you will save me by your righteousness. I trust that you will listen closely to me. I trust that you will rescue me. I trust you because you are a rock of refuge for me, a mountain fortress to save me. I trust you because you are my rock and my fortress. I trust because you lead and guide me, and you do it for your name's sake. God, who is not going to allow his name to be dishonored or to be disrespected or to be looked down upon in any way, that God who is going to accomplish goodness for his sake, David would be the man who would experience that goodness, who would be the beneficiary, or the beneficiary, put the right emphasis on the right syllable, right? The beneficiary of God's goodness, of his saving power, of his trustworthiness. So the psalm begins that David has great confidence in Yahweh. I maybe should include verse number 4 in that. He trusts that Yahweh would free him from the nets that is secretly set for him. Why? Because he is his refuge. But then verse number 5, I think verse number 5 is really the foundational verse of the psalm. Into your hand I entrust my spirit. You have redeemed me, Yahweh, God of truth. Hold on to that verse. We'll come back to it here in a little bit. Verse number 6 begins by saying, I hate those who are devoted to worthless idols. They are devoted to the worthless idols. That you might say they trust worthless idols. And he contrasts himself, David does, with these men. They trust, they are devoted to worthless idols. But I trust in Yahweh. I will rejoice and be glad in your faithful love, because you have seen my affliction. You have not handed me over to the enemy. You have set my feet in a spacious place instead of being on a narrow cliff. Instead of being surrounded tightly by enemies, I am in a spacious place. I am unoppressed by enemies. I am unoppressed by the elements, by the situation. That's what you do for me. Now, the situation itself was not very good. That's explained in verses 9 through 13. Again, we don't know exactly what the circumstance is for this psalm, if there was a specific circumstance that might have spurred David to write this psalm, or if this was a reflection maybe upon various circumstances that he had found himself in during his lifetime. But beginning in verse 9 and going through verse 13, we just see the situation. He says, I'm in distress. My eyes are worn from frustration. My whole being is worn out. He's consumed with grief. There's groaning. His strength has failed him. He said, my bones waste away. But notice that he says, because of my iniquity. Now that's getting to the Hebrew text. Some of the translations, like the Septuagint, Greek translation of the Old Testament, have affliction. I say probably would go towards the Hebrew text, talked about iniquity, that maybe this is a situation where David has sinned in some way, and there is grief that is a result of that. So that might be what's going on here. But verse number 11, I'm ridiculed by my adversaries. Even the neighbors are mean to him. He's dreaded by his acquaintances. People see him in the street and they run away. I'm forgotten. People hear gossip about me. People have conspired against me. They plotted to take my life. So verses 9 through 13, whatever the circumstance, it's very negative. It's very bad. It is not a situation anyone would enjoy being in. It is a situation where it would be very easy for someone to lose confidence and just give up altogether. Very easy. However, we see in verse 14, but I trust in you, Yahweh. I say, you are my God. I say, you, Yahweh, I trust in. You are my God. The emphasis here in verse 14. The course of my life is in your power. You rescue me from the power of my enemies, from my persecutors. If he's going to be rescued, he knows that's going to be he is going to be rescued by Yahweh. His desire is for Yahweh's face to shine on his servant, for him to be saved by Yahweh's faithful love. We saw that already in verse number 7, faithful love, that Hesed, and is present here in verse 16 as well. His request is that Yahweh, you do not let me be disgraced when I call on you. He requests, do not let instead let the wicked be disgraced. Let them be quiet in Sheol. Let the lying lips, the arrogant speakers, let them be silenced. Not me. And that's really David's confidence again. He knew that by God's grace, by God's loving, faithful love, by his loving kindness, that he would not be disgraced, but these would be. So based on this, based on David's confidence in Yahweh, based on his trust in Yahweh, he just exclaims the goodness of Yahweh. How great is your goodness that you have stored up for those who fear you. and accomplished in the sight of everyone. Those who take refuge in you, you hide them in the protection of your presence. You conceal them in a shelter from what? From the enemy, from the danger, from human schemes, from quarrelsome tongues. Therefore, blessed be Yahweh, for he has shown, what is it? Faithful love to me. We saw it in 17, faithful love. We see it in 16, faithful love here, 21 again. We see faithful love. You have shown that to me in a city under siege. I think this is contrasted with verse 18, which talks about a spacious place. He had been a city under siege. Again, he had been surrounded by the enemies. He had been on a very narrow cliff, no way to go on either side. He felt trapped. But now, because of Yahweh, because of his faithful love, he feels as if he's been put in a spacious place. Verse number 8. In my alarm, I said, I am cut off from your sight. But what's the reality? The reality is you heard the sound of my pleading when I cried to you for help. So love Yahweh, all his faithful ones. Yahweh protects the loyal. He fully repays the arrogant. Be strong. Let your heart be courageous. All you who put your hope in Yahweh. I've seen numerous times throughout the Psalms this theme of David taking his experience and using it as a reason for others to either love the Lord or to worship the Lord or to exalt Yahweh. We saw it, in fact, in our last read on Friday from Psalm number 30, where after he talks about the deliverance that Yahweh would give to him, where he says, so sing to Yahweh, you his faithful ones, that praise his holy name. This time in Psalm 31, he says, love Yahweh, all his faithful ones. So he's taking his experience and using it to teach others, to move others and motivate others to a particular behavior, this time to love Yahweh. Why? Well, because he protects the loyal. He's going to take care of the arrogant. The arrogant, he's going to repay in justice fully. But you, he's going to take care of. So the conclusion is, be strong and let your heart be courageous. All you who put your hope in Yahweh, courage and strength, they come from hope in Yahweh. So what does that look like? What does it look like to put our hope in Yahweh and to be able then to experience strength and courage within our hearts? It's verse number 5, where David says again, into your hand I entrust my spirit. You have redeemed me, Yahweh, God of truth. Jesus quotes this on the cross. Into your hands I commit my spirits. Stephen says something similar in Acts chapter 7 and verse 59, where he asks Jesus to receive his spirit. What's interesting about this is that in both these instances, the one who entrusted his spirit with Yahweh, they both die. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that death was still a reality for both Jesus and Stephen? But I want us to consider that just because they died does not mean that Yahweh's faithfulness had failed. Not at all. Death does not mean God has failed. Again, whenever we put our trust in Yahweh, that doesn't mean we're not going to experience a bad or negative thing. It still very well could happen. And it does. All the prayers we lift up for healing for somebody who is sick, sometimes that person doesn't get better. But does that mean Yahweh's faithfulness has failed? No, not at all. Not at all. Because the true strength of Yahweh is seen in our trust in him. That because of who he is, because who he has proven himself to be, we then put our trust in him and we entrust our spirit to him. We entrust the situation to him. We entrust the problem to him. And we know that regardless of how the situation plays out, that we can have peace that Yahweh has control over it. That's the real, that's what it really looks like to be someone who entrusts our spirit to God. This is what it looks like for someone to put their hope in God. So regardless of the situation, the circumstance, and even really regardless of the outcome, we can still be strengthened and we can still have great courage in our hope in Yahweh if we will truly entrust ourselves to him in every situation. in every problem that we face. And one of the ways we can do that is through worship. Whenever we worship Yahweh, whenever we lift up his name, whenever we exalt him, what that often helps us to move from is a feeling of affliction to a place of assurance. Because in worship, what are we doing? Are we not speaking about the realities of Yahweh? Are we not speaking about how good he is and how loving he is and how patient in it he is and how strong he is and how he will be with us through the struggle? What does that leave us with in the end? That leaves us feeling assured. So we are moving in our worship and in these moments where our faith is trust, or where our trust is tested, we're moving from that affliction to assurance. But again, that trust must be in Yahweh and not ourselves. It must be in his name being honored in the situation and not our own. When we truly trust in Yahweh, no matter what we face, no matter what we endure, we must be a people who are willing to say, into your hands, I entrust my spirit. Are we willing to do that? Are we doing that in our moments of trial, temptation, and struggle? May God help us certainly to do so. Jesus did. Stephen did. May we certainly follow their example. If you have any questions or comments about this psalm here, Psalm 31, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And I do appreciate you taking some time reading along with me on this Monday. Hope that you had a great weekend. Hope that you had a good start to your Monday. And I hope it continues to go well. We'll be back at it reading together Psalm number 32 on Wednesday, the joy of forgiveness. Hope you'll tune in then to read along with me on Wednesday, Psalm 32. Take care. God bless.